Jury reaches a verdict in the Boston bombing trial. Joker Tsarnaev is found guilty of all 30 charges. He now faces the death penalty.
Joining us now, former criminal defense attorneys E.JayAbt and Eric Schwartzreich. You guys have both been in the business of defending criminals. What do you think are the chances that Joker Tsarnaev gets the death penalty? Because, of course, he's facing it now. I want to start with Eric.
Liz, I think this is definitely a very difficult case. It's like the Mount Kilimanjaro of death penalty cases. And Judy Clark, who's a very well accomplished criminal defense attorney, she has that uphill battle. We are in Boston, however, where the state does not have the death penalty. It is a federal prosecution. But, now it's going to come down to aggravators versus mitigators, big brother versus little brother. And are those aggravators going to outweigh the mitigators, or are the mitigators going to outweigh the aggravators? And, the issue really here is that this never was a whodunit. From the beginning of this case, in opening statements and closing statements, Judy Clark told the jurors that he is guilty. It's a question of, was he under the influence? Was he under the control? Was it his big brother versus little brother? And is the jury going to buy that and spare him of his life?
Well, Jay, what about the influence of a state having a death penalty given in a state that is so averse to death penalty? Is there a carryover? I know it's a federal court. It is not a state court. They will have that opportunity to give a death penalty, but doesn't the culture impinge upon that decision?
I actually disagree with Eric. I think the uphill battle is for the prosecution, because you are in Massachusetts. It's a very liberal state. And even though there's going to be some very graphic and depictive evidence and testimony by the prosecution during the penalty phase, during the death penalty phase of the trial, you have, as he mentioned, Judy Clark and Bill Fick, who are the defense lawyers for Tsarnaev. I have personally known Bill Fick for over 30 years. He is a genius. He's a Yale law grad. And, I mean, if you watch the trial, he did an amazing job of cross-examining the cyber FBI agent Swindon and getting him to admit that it was impossible to determine who downloaded the bomb-making instructions on the computer. These are fantastic attorneys at saving people's lives. The trial was never about guilt or innocence. It is about life or death. And I think that there is a huge burden here for the state. They're going to have a tough time in Massachusetts. There's evidence that, for example, the bomb parts only had the older brother's fingerprints on them, not the younger brothers. There's lots of reasons why they'll persuade a jury to give this guy life in prison. For example, he was only 19 years old. He's under the spell of his brother. And there's a lot of compelling evidence that his lawyers can present to avoid the death penalty.
In fact, Eric, Judy Clark's been called a Houdini on this network by a former federal prosecutor. She has been able to get people like the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, away from the death penalty. Susan Smith, who drove her children, her tiny children, into a lake and drowned them. She's still alive and kicking. So there is that ability here. However,
Eric Rudolph, the Olympic Park bomber, she represented it. And I mean, there are lots of people. There's a long list that she, and don't forget Bill Fick as well. They're amazing.
We're not challenging her brain power. She's a genius. We know that. But Eric, again, the evidence with the video, does it work to say to a jury, does it work to say, oh, he was under Svengali-like influence of his brother?
We got to wrap it at that. I'm sorry. We have literally run out of time, Jay. We got to wrap. Thank you very much. I got to say, if there's ever been a case for a death penalty, it's hard to find another one.
Let's have Jay and Eric back.
E.JayAbt, Eric Schwartzreich, thank you very much, gentlemen. Good to talk to both of you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll bring you back. It's far from over.